So I recently left an institution role where I was on the marketing team and was working with a lot of analytics reporting, mainly in that Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics platform, and then also doing just some like website development work for us. So this was my sort of bread and butter. And now on the engagement analytics team, still again working with a lot of data. I'll be working on the insights team, if you're familiar with that, within the Element products under that data and automations tool. So what to expect today? We're going to do an introduction to Tag Manager, what that platform is, and some of the core building blocks of what it's made up of: tags, triggers, and variables. And then I'll kick it over to Chris while we digest that to talk about strategy, how this fits into marketing as a whole, and some of the ways that you can use it, some of the benefits. And then we've got a work-along demo. It didn't sound like anybody really had maybe access to Tag Manager. A lot of us didn't maybe have access to Tag Manager accounts that our institution would be using. That's okay. We'll still be following that along with the screen. But if you do have it, feel free to code along with us a little bit here. Then we'll have some time for some questions and answers if you've got any. And then a little bit of heads up about Google Analytics 4. There's some changes that, yeah, okay, you saw the eye roll there, yeah. We'll spill all the tea about that little transition there. So great, let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Tag Manager. Okay, so we've got 4 key concepts to cover in our overview of Tag Manager. First, what a Tag Manager is, and then we'll look at, again, those building blocks of variables, triggers, and tags. Okay, so Tag Manager is a container for all of the various measurement scripts that might be deployed on your institution's various websites and web properties. Okay, so a measurement script is anything that's going to be monitoring users on the pages that are on your sites and giving you information about page views, how long they were there. Maybe they can scrub some demographic or location-based data about those users and feed that to various properties. Of course, the most common application is with Google Analytics. Use Tag Manager to put your analytics measurement script on your website and then use the full functionality of analytics that way. You can also pass like events onto Google Analytics, and we'll look at how that functions. But basically, you can store, that was a very slow fade in, fade out, all of your various measurement scripts within Tag Manager. So here's kind of our application here. Let's say you've just started using the Facebook ad network, or the Meta ad network as it's now called. We won't get into that. And if you are, and if you're the one that's scheduling those ads, I'm sorry that you're having to do that. That's not the most pleasant experience if you've ever had the opportunity to. But they will give you a pixel or a beacon, depending on how you might hear it called. And you would need to place that on all of your institution's web pages. So you could either go page by page and paste that script into the HTML of each page on your website, all 20, 30, 40,000, or you could deploy it into Tag Manager, and every page that Tag Manager was on would be able to immediately do that. And so if you've got lots of measurement scripts from Meta, from Snapchat, TikTok, from Analytics, from Element, right, and you need to manage and service all of those measurement scripts, it can become very difficult to do that at sort of scale, and Tag Manager helps you do that, and it also allows you to do it within a nice user interface. You don't have to go in and learn all of the HTML and parse through the head code. If you're not familiar, it gives you this interface that you can easily work with. And once you've deployed Tag Manager on your website, you can not have to bother your IT team or your web development team anymore. You can manage this all yourself. Okay, so as we're seeing over there on the left nav, we've got our tags, triggers, and variables pages over there. We're actually going to hop into variables first. Okay, so variables are actually a concept that we get from programming. And so this is hopefully something that you can take away that's valuable to have in your tool belt, this conceptual overview of variables. And so in variables, for variables in programming and in Tag Manager, they function as kind of a box, right? You can put a value or something into that box. You can take it out of the box, and the box persists, right? You can even give that box a name. And in this example, we'll give it a value of submit this form, the words, right? And so our code might look something like this: click text equals submit this form. So what happened here? Let's say the user is on your website, they've punched in their information into an RFI form, and they've clicked that submit button. And let's say the text of that button is submit this form. Okay, Tag Manager has already identified that there is an event that happened on your web page, and it's going to grab attributes of that event and plug them automatically into these variables for us to access. Yeah, so here's another example. We've got our click text again. Another event happens, a button click. They've scrolled down, they're looking at more content. They click get more information. Tag Manager notices that activity, grabs the attributes of that event, and plugs them into the variables for us. Are we still tracking? Okay, here's what that would kind of look like in the code. Okay, so Tag Manager gives us some default variables, right, automatically, that it will, again, automatically push values into when it recognizes events. There's probably 5 times more than what's listed on that screen. Of course, we see click text there, right? And then we can also create our own variables to pass information into. You see the one there that's for elements, the application GUID. We can pass that information into Tag Manager and then send it elsewhere, such as into Google Analytics, to measure what applications are getting submitted, not just that all applications are getting submitted, excuse me. Okay, triggers, the next concept, right? Triggers are listeners. They are waiting for certain conditions to be met within those events and variables so that they can cause something to happen. So if you're used to using like conditional logic, this is it, right? It's looking for when the click text equals submit and the page URL, let's say, is our RFI form. We want to cause something to happen that would be the firing of this tag. Okay, so triggers are the listeners, cause something to happen. That happening is the tag. The tag then is the information. Okay, so for this tag to fire, right, it was triggered by those conditions and it passed information then onto Google Analytics that an event happened, the category of that event was a click, and the action equaled submit. Okay, so there's a very high-level overview with a hopefully helpful example of the core concepts of Tag Manager. Again, it's a container for all your measurement scripts. Variables hold attributes of events for us to access with triggers and deploy tags. Okay, again, we'll have a demo. We'll look at what that looks like in practice. But Element has 2 kind of main integrations with Tag Manager. One, you can deploy Element's measurement script via Tag Manager to your institution's websites, and you can also add your Google Tag Manager ID into forms, applications, and events, and those web properties will pass information and event information onto Tag Manager for you to use in other applications like analytics or like a digital ad network. Okay, so just a little bit more information about those integrations. The page view measurement script, one that's going to record if the user is identified, record their activity on your institution's website, not just on your element pages, but on your institution's website, and store that in the user record. So let's say they've been identified and they're browsing around your financial aid pages, or they're browsing around your program pages on your institution website. You know that now in Element. You can also get an aggregate measurement of your page views within Insights. If you haven't checked out Insights yet, it's under that Data and Automations tab. And if you don't see it right now, it's rolling out to all users as we speak, is my understanding. So there's a lot of helpful information in there, including page views. This Google Tag Manager ID field, again found in Forms, Applications, and Events, allows you to plug your Google Tag Manager ID into the setup of those various things, and then they will send information back to Tag Manager for you to use there. Okay, so while we sort of process and digest that, I'm going to kick it over to Chris, and we'll talk some strategy for using Tag Manager. Chris.
Thank you. Let's take a step back from a marketing perspective and talk about the why. Why would you want to use this? We think this is a really great tool that works very seamlessly with Element, but what are some of the benefits and considerations of using it? So, how does this fit in your marketing strategy? Ultimately, we're trying to reach prospective students and get them to complete actions, right? We want them to submit information in your RFI form. You want them to submit an application, attend a visit day, and those kinds of activities. But we can't really do any of that unless we can get them to our web properties in the first place. And for those of you that do marketing work, it's really difficult, and it gets more difficult every year. The only way that you can be successful is if and you've heard this before, implement a fully integrated omni-channel strategy that engages in paid media, earned media, social media, owned media, and you have to tell your story over and over again to reinforce your message, and eventually that's going to resonate with your intended audience, and then they will understand that the value of what you're offering, that higher education will have a transformative effect in their lives. And that's something that we really support and we obviously believe in. So we want to help you with that journey. But if you take a step back from that, that means that you have to do that work, you have to engage with all these different networks and services, code bases and everything. And so it really means that you need a tool to manage all of that noise in one place. And the other thing, I made this comment yesterday during our PAX presentation, if you sat in on it. While the demand's going up, you're not necessarily, at least when I worked in digital marketing roles, I never got many additional resources to manage that demand. So if we have a tool that can help out with that and give some added functionality, we think this is a really great tool to share. One of the benefits that Tag Manager has, and this is one example, and I'll go through a couple other here in a little bit, is its ability to support ad retargeting. It's a really great tool for that, and that's the idea. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's the idea of serving up ads to users who have already interacted with your brand somehow. So maybe they've interacted with you on your social media account. Maybe they visited a page on Element or on your institutional website, and then you can serve up an ad to them across the internet, so that will encourage them to come back and maybe complete an action. Again, sign up for a visit day or complete an application for your institution. And those ads are really effective. They're about 10 times more the click-through rate of ad retargeted ads than non-targeted ads. So it's something that you really want to use in your marketing toolbox. But if you're going to do that, that means you have to manage all these different ad networks and code bases and kind of maintain that. And you also need to be able to specify when those tags will be triggered and in what situations. Are you looking to isolate traffic that comes from one particular source? Are you looking to target users that have been to one specific landing page? So that's one example of why Tag Manager is great, because it can handle all of that really well. And I'm going to go through a few more benefits here in just a moment. So the next benefit, and I think my favorite, is that it's free. Hopefully your favorite too. I mean, virtually anything that you have to do within Tag Manager doesn't have a cost associated with it. And again, I've worked in marketing roles, and it's mind-blowing the stack of technology that you have to manage, right? You have SEO, SEM tools, project management, digital asset management, website tools, creative licenses. I mean, it's so much that you have to manage. So to get another tool into your toolkit that doesn't have an added cost and gives you some really great functionality is a really great thing. The other thing that is wonderful about Tag Manager is that your developers will be really glad that you're using it. Within the context of Element, you actually don't need development support to get Tag Manager connected to our system. We just need to know your Tag Manager ID, and we can get it plugged in. Now, if we're talking about installing it on a website or a content management system, and maybe some of this information you're hearing today will be valuable for that as well, it's also not that big of an ask. You really just need to deploy one code snippet, one container. From there, that's where Tag Manager will fire all of the tags based on the situation that you specify. The other thing that's great about that, from a development perspective, is that because Tag Manager will only load the code that you need, it means that speed and load time is going to be much more efficient. And if you use, if you use tags that come directly from the Tag Manager library, you're always going to get the most up-to-date versions of all of those tags on your site or your web property. Another thing that Tag Manager does really well is the debugging and testing aspect. That's automatically built in. It does that right away. And if you consider the process for installing a tag without Tag Manager, I don't know if any of you have gone through this before, but I sure have, where you have to put in a request to your development team, let's say for like the Facebook pixel, they add it to your website, and then you have to wait. You wait to collect data to see if it's working correctly, and then if it's not, you got to start over and do it all over again. And Tag Manager handles all of that for you. You can also export and import templates, so if you want to share your setup among multiple web properties, it's great. And like I said, in many cases, you don't even need to have the code snippet. Tag Manager has a library of most of the most common tags or connections that you would probably use. It can support custom HTML, and when you install anything in that field, It will also do, it'll also scan for malware. So it's a kind of added layer of security for your users. The other thing that I like about Tag Manager from a marketing perspective is the project management and the documentation aspect. Coming back to, again, my experience, the thing that has probably kept me up the most at night in all of the work that I've done has been version control, which is not fun or glamorous by any means, but like if you don't do it, things can go off the rails really quickly. And Tag Manager is really good because it gives you that single source of truth to work out of. Within Tag Manager, everything is self-contained. It's managed with this system that has version control, so you can see who published what changes and when. And it's very similar to GitHub or like another code management tool. The other thing that I like about this, it lets you set different levels of access for users, both within your organization and outside of your organization. So very common scenarios, you might find yourself working with like external consultants or vendors that they need to have access to your Tag Manager setup, or maybe you're looking to advertise on a new ad network, and so you need to give someone from that service access to Tag Manager temporarily to get their code installed. So really useful for user management as well. One point that I want to stress, and Tim alluded to this, Tag Manager is the tool that you use for managing code snippets and serving up tags and setting those triggers in those situations and events for when they fire. But it's not the tool for data analysis. That's Google Analytics. That's a separate connection. That obviously it's very seamless because it's all Google, but that's sort of the breakdown between the two sides of it. So we'll talk about that more here in a little bit. Okay, so within the context of Element, what are some use cases that you'd want to have Tag Manager apply, right? Like, let's get back to the software and where is the application here? Some of the common use cases that you have are interactions with emails, traffic activity on landing pages, applications, events, forms, surveys, conversations. And so you're probably picking up, and I'm talking about like most of the features and most of the touch points on Element, and you're right, that's intentional. We think that Tag Manager is a really great companion tool to use with Element to support your work on the inbound side and bringing traffic to the platform. So I'm going to turn things back over to Tim. We're going to go through a walkthrough to see how to set up some of these events in action, and then we'll go from there.
Great, thank you, Chris. All right, so we're just going to walk through this demo here. Again, we're going to look at how to track milestones in Google Analytics using Google Tag Manager and Google Tag Manager's integration with Element. Okay, so let's look kind of at the goal line first here. Okay, so I'm at Google Analytics. That's what it looks like if you're not familiar with it. Over here we've got some various pre-built reports. One of those is events that have happened on our various websites, including Element ones. And what we're seeing here is we have an event category of milestone, right, that correlates to the milestones that we log in Element. And if we click into that further, we can see that those milestones were application starts. So we're going to look at how that information gets passed along. We can even look at the event label and see what application specifically. So we can build a report within Google Analytics about the various milestones that are happening across our websites and report that way. We can also use analytics to create a segment. Let's say that we've wanted to create a segment of people who have completed an application, and then we wanted to target that segment with an ad. We could pass that segment onto Google Ads and run an ad campaign that way. We're not going to cover all of that. That would get a very long demo. We're just going to look at monitoring the events, the milestones. Okay, so I've got Google Tag Manager open up in this other tab. And what I'm looking at here is just the Tag Manager overview interface. All I'm going to do here now is just hop back to the account screen, and I'm just going to highlight and grab our container ID. That was also available right here, but I'm just looking for that GTM dash number. That's our container ID. Now I'm over in Element on the dashboard, And we're going to look at our application site. So we've already created our application. We're not going to walk through that. We've already got our application site. And then once we open up our site, we've got our setup tab. And then there in the setup, we've got our Google Tag ID field. Again, I'm just copying and pasting that into the field that will automatically add your container and all of the tags you're deploying through that container to the element page, and element will pass information to that tag manager container. Okay, now I'm going to preview that application site. I've got it open here. Great, I'm already logged in. Cool, and these are the various test applications that I've done to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Great, there's our site. I'm going to grab our URL, copy that, and then I'm just going to close this. I was just checking that it was open. Okay, now back in Tag Manager, I'm looking over here at our preview screen. When I click this, it's going to open up Tag Assistant. This is the debug mode that Chris was referencing. And basically, this is going to show us what's happening on our website, what tags are working, maybe tags that aren't working, and help us get everything streamlined before those tags go live on our website. Okay, so I'm going to paste our URL into the website URL field and connect. That's going to reopen our page, but we can see now that Tag Assistant is working on this page, and we actually have the Tag Assistant tab still open here. I'm going to clear through that, and what we're seeing now is a summary of all the things that have happened on that website page as it's loaded. So here they are in order of event. Right, these are all just standard page load events. For our purposes today, we're just going to ignore them. But as more events happen, they will appear under this, this summary. And then we're also seeing what tags have fired and what tags have not. We're going to be looking at this application start tag and how that's working. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to our page, and I'm going to start a new application. Just going to pick some random fields here. Got a very short application, which is nice. Let's see if that's going to let me do it. Great. Okay. No, I think I had already done that one. I'm going to try it again. Let's go biology and physical therapy. Great. Please work. I've already done that one. Okay. Pick a term, any term. No, history. Definitely history. Okay. Megan Major 1. Shout out to Megan. Invalid request. No. Okay. Well, something in there worked. Wow, that's not great for the demo. Okay, it's fine. We're moving forward. Okay, so I've created an application, started an application over here in my demo, and then we've logged an event over here. Right, we've seen that this has changed. Event 9 here was, as we can see, application start. Now that's what Element has automatically sent back to Tag Manager, right? And we can see we'll next click into the data layer. Okay, so the data layer is the actual information that Element has pushed to Tag Manager. And we can see we have a few fields here. That event name of application start, that was the event that Tag Manager logged, great. And then we also have these options for application GUID and application name. Okay, so we're going to be grabbing this application GUID by creating a custom variable. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and close Tag Assistant for now, and hopefully when I reopen it again, I won't mess it up so bad. And then we're going to go over to our variables tab. Okay. And we need to create a new user-defined variable so that we can pass that information from Element, the GUID, into this new variable in Tag Manager. Okay, I'm going to create new, right? I've already actually done this, so I'm just opening up application GUID. I'm going to pick a variable type of that data layer variable. That was what we saw over in the Tag Assistant. And again, I'll just select that option. I'm going to give it a name of application GUID. And that's the only thing that I'm doing. I'm creating this custom variable, and now when that appears in the data layer, Tag Manager will automatically grab its value and put it into this custom variable. We're still tracking that. We'll see again how that looks. Great. Next, I'm going to create our trigger. Our trigger is going to listen for when an event happens, when an event happens, that event equals application start. So anytime it sees that event of application start, the trigger is going to cause something to happen, And what is it going to cause to happen? It will cause this tag to pass information onto Google Analytics. Okay, so I've got a Google Analytics tag type. The track type is event. And then this is the actual information that I'm passing on. So you remember that we saw this already in analytics. So I'm back over here in analytics, and our category was milestone, right? And that's, again, what we inputted here. And then what I'm doing here is I'm actually grabbing the variable value. So rather than saying application start, typing that in, I'm actually just going over here into our variables options, and I'm grabbing the event name. And so anytime that populates, right, it's just going to populate the event name for me. I don't have to do that every time or create a new tag for each variation. Let's say we're also doing application completes or event form registrations. We can just pass the event name in. And then we're also passing in the application GUID value. And again, that's exactly what we're seeing over here in analytics. Okay, our event action, application start, and our event label, right, is our GUID. And that's, again, how we're getting that information there. So now we've got our trigger, our tag, and our variable set up, and we're going to have another look at the preview and make sure that it's firing, and this is that debug functionality. So I'm opening up it again. I've got our URL, connecting. Let's see if I can do it right this time. Okay, starting a new application. If I pick the values that I've already picked before, let me know. Let's do that. Starting a new application. Great, and there it is showing up. We had a history change. There's our application start, and now let's look at what tags specifically fired during that event. We had our application start tag fire. Is that all making sense? So over here again, looking at the data layer, we see our GUID, we see our event name, we see our variables, and we see our new custom variable, and it grabbed the value out of the data layer, and then the tag that it's passing that information into fired and sent our event back to analytics. That was a lot. Thank you for sticking in for that. All right, that concludes the demo of getting all that information out. So once we're done, right, we've seen that that's all working successfully in Tag Assistant. We can close that down, and then we can simply submit and publish our changes. And now it's live on the website. We didn't have to involve our developers or anything like that. All we had to do was understand the data layer. All right, great. So that's the demo. Do we have any questions about that? There was a lot in there, and it was pretty technical. So, right. Best practices questions? What's up?
Do you have like a resource that you go to? I mean, obviously, like, as you're getting started, there's a ton to follow here.
Yeah.
Is there like something stupid, like a YouTube channel?
Oh, for sure.
Like, okay.
Yeah, no, there's some great YouTube channels. Again, just a tag manager introduction search will get you there. And it's I think there's one called like Measurement School. I've watched a lot of those. But Google also has a lot of great documentation about learning Tag Manager and using Tag Manager in a broad sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point, because I forgot to mention that in my section. Google has a lot of information. I think they even have like a course on Tag Manager. I don't think it's like a certification like on the analytics side, but there's some like formal training that's there. And the other thing that I'll just kind of step back, Tag Manager is really the industry standard for managing all of these kinds of tags.
For sure.
So on the documentation side, there's so much. I mean, there's what Google has, but then yes, you can go
Huge
on YouTube,
community
you can
support.
go on blogs. Because we're talking about inbound marketing tools, the SEO is pretty good on the sites that have that have these kinds of resources. So if you search it, you're going to see some really good stuff, and kind of in the top ranking results. So yeah, there's a lot that's out there.
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry, you had a question.
Well, no, but finish your statement.
Oh, I was just kind of filling time here. Maybe you'll never touch Tag Manager, and that's great. But I hope this demo is something that you could take to communicate with the people that will be. I think conceptually it's important to understand, and it can certainly save you a lot of time, especially in that communication back and forth with your marketing teams or your web teams. But anyway, I'm sorry, what was your question?
You touched on social media.
Yeah.
For Tag Manager, and are you talking about just the paid advertising you do on social, or is there a use case for organic?
Yeah, it's mainly going to be on the paid side, right? So when you set up like an ad in the Meta ad platform, right? They send you that pixel, you deploy it onto your website, and then in the Meta ad platform, you can set conversion events. And let's say you want users to click on your ad, visit your landing page, and then submit the RFI form. And to know that, Facebook is going to use that measurement script to listen on your page for that event button click. And you can use Tag Manager to allow it to do that. And it will be able to set that conversion event back in the Facebook ad platform. The reason they want to do it there is so they can correlate those conversion events and the impressions you get on that ads with your spend. And then you can get a click-through rate and a click-through cost, right? And be able to measure that spend there in the platform.
So we need to be proactive and like if we're working with a digital ad agency to make sure that we're connecting our Google Tag Manager to what they're doing, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's it.
It,
Yeah, it gets kind of tricky there, and you're on the marketing team, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So are you operating your own tag manager internally?
Well, see, that's another thing is there's a person who's much more knowledgeable about this in our RTS team who
Okay.
has deployed Google Tag Manager, and so I don't know a whole lot about it, and so he said, Google it to learn about it. I'm thinking that I probably need to have a lot more hands-on, with this, but I also don't want to overstep. So like,
For
how
sure.
much do I need to rely on somebody else who's super knowledgeable about this
Mm-hmm.
myself, and how much I need to do myself so that I can see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on kind of your contract with the ad vendor or however that's organized, like the scope of their work, I should say, you can give them access to your tag manager environment. You could do it temporarily if you want, set up an account for a month or so, however long they need, and they can go in there and make edits directly.
Again, without knowing a little bit more about the interplay with your situation, that's kind of difficult to answer. But I would say just conceptually knowing what Tag Manager is going to be valuable, and I hope that can help your specific efforts. When working with vendors will sometimes want to use your Tag Manager. Hopefully, that's what when working with vendors, always pushed for.
Yeah.
Let's use the same environment, because sometimes vendors will want to deploy their own tag managers, right?
We've had pixels, they
Right.
pixels
Yes.
website, but I'm not sure that that's being plugged into our tag manager, because I can see.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
See
Mm-hmm.
in campaigns where there are different things that I can tell that it's coming from certain vendors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm looking at it the right way.
Gotcha.
One thing in that situation, if you're not in a tag manager environment, you're looking to move to it, you want to be careful you need to choose to use Tag Manager or not. So in other words, if you move to a Tag Manager environment, you install a Facebook pixel in Tag Manager, but you still have it on your existing web property, it's going to fire twice and it's going to mess up your data. Yeah.
And that's, again, the advantage there, right, is you plug all of your measurement scripts, everything, into Tag Manager, so that the only code that's actually living on your website is that Tag Manager container code, which looks like this, as Chris showed us, and that's it. That really helps with your load time, right? So rather than having to go 200 lines of code through all of your measurement scripts, it's only reading that, and then when tags need to fire, they can fire what's called asynchronously, and that can help your page load faster and keep users more engaged with your content, so they're not waiting for it to spin. Okay. Any other questions about Tag Manager? Anybody else want to talk about programming? What's up?
So there's clearly a ton that you can do with this. And
Yes.
it can get really granular,
Yeah.
which is cool. But if you were to give someone who's just getting started advice, what's kind of the low-hanging fruit? These are the main things that can really help you with 2 or 3 things.
Absolutely. So first, it's a great place to deploy Google Analytics.
Yeah.
If you're not using Google Analytics, it's another great free tool that you can pair with Element and with some other properties, and it also can integrate with Google Ads. And that's again the primary use case for most people in Tag Manager. What's also nice is that Tag Manager is where you can pass that event information back to analytics. So again, some low-hanging events to monitor in Tag Manager,
Yeah.
right? RFI form submissions, application starts, application completes, registrations, Maybe you can do scroll depth. You can get a sense of how deep people are going into your content, especially for longer pages.
Is the benefit of that, because I mean, obviously you're already seeing where forms are submitted
Mhm.
elsewhere, right? So you can see that on, through Element.
Sure, right.
So what would be the benefit to tracking that event here? Is it
In
just all the
analytics.
data in one place where
It's
it's
the-
tracking back to GA?
Right. So in Google Analytics, right, you can do some more powerful things, like you can create those segments, right? So you can obviously have your element segments, but you could mirror those segments, or at least partially replicate them in analytics as well. And then when doing that, you can connect those to Google Ads and you can run campaigns against those segments. Or you can use another tool called Google Optimize, which is an A/B testing tool that also that's connected to Tag Manager and the other sort of platform there. And it also lets you deploy like personalized content on your institution's web pages. And so you could kind of do a personalized content on your homepage. You could use Optimize to put a card on your homepage that would say, hey, your last action was you completed this application. Thanks for doing that. Here's your next step. Something very personal like that.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add to that, and this is not necessarily in the low-hanging fruit category, I'm sorry. There's, a little bit of a learning curve, or at least a work curve to get it set up. But to answer your question, why would you want to link your form completion to Google Analytics? Well, if you're running campaigns on the inbound side and you want to, figure out what your cost per acquisition is and run that through, analytics to see that metrics and that conversion, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. And analytics is a great place to do that cost per accumulation of data. It's sometimes very difficult to pull all that together, and analytics is a place that you can do that and really analyze your marketing spend. That's that's kind of the bread and butter of paid ads, right? Is where can I get the cheapest impressions? Where can I get the cheapest RFI form submissions? Or whatever the use case. Okay. Any other questions?
We can also talk about Google Analytics. There's questions
yes,
on that too. We could
for sure.
probably talk about that for another hour, but we won't.
We can. Yeah.
We know we're in between you and lunch, so we're gonna.
Yeah. Okay. Just I guess a heads up. We wanted to throw this in here about Google Analytics. Analytics has two kind of versions of the product right now. The most common one is what's called Universal Analytics. That's kind of version 3 for analytics. But they've recently released a new version of the platform called Google Analytics 4. And they are sunsetting Universal Analytics in July of next year. And so that's been kind of a heads up for a lot of marketers, for people that have used analytics to do all of this measurement and to send all their events. That Universal Analytics data is separate from GA4. And so kind of best practices right now is to sort of deploy both through Tag Manager and start monitoring information in Tag Manager in Analytics 4, and then setting up sort of your goals and your conversion events in Analytics 4 sort of over time. So that's really the highest level that we could touch on with GA4. I mean, we could really get into the weeds again, but I'm hesitant to do that and have another deep in the weeds demo experience. Yeah. But any questions about that? Okay, well, thank you for wading through all this technical information with us. Again, happy to talk more about this if you wanna connect after and look through it on your instance if you have access to it. And then of course we have support through Element with getting this into Elements integrations, right? So if you have any questions about that or you want to connect with your marketing team and us and have a conversation, we'd be more than happy to facilitate that. Okay.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to this session. Thank you for coming to Engage.